and welcome to this review of my Silicon Graphics 9500-900 keyboard. Indeed, finally we look at an SGI Granite. The lack of a review of one of these was possibly the most obvious hole in my repertoire so far. They aren't particularly uncommon or anything, but it took me a while to get a non-super overpriced one in this specific model type that wasn't discolored. The ABS in these tends to yellow over time and turn the lovely bluish grey colorway of the case into a rather ugly mottled puke green. The colour and speckled pattern on the case is in fact what earned it its Granite nickname, even though there are also non-speckled versions and even a Granite version of its successor, which was a rebranded NMB RT6856T. However, that is a rubber dome keyboard. This one is part number 9500-900, which is by far the most well-known model, namely the ANSI Granite-case one with PS2 protocol. Both the Granite and the beige models also had versions that ran SGI's own protocol, but this is not compatible with most converters, and as such the 95-900 is generally the most sought-after version, and also the one I wanted to cover in this review. The SGI Granite is an Alps Bigfoot keyboard, part of what they call the AX platform. The moniker Bigfoot comes from its large footprint of 47 by 21 centimeters, so about 1,000 square centimeters. Or for those who are still stuck in the 18th century, 1 foot and 6 inches by 8.5 inches for a footprint of 12 3/4 inch feet. Considering the switches the SGI model comes with, I'm guessing it was a relatively late entry to the series, but still a pretty decent amount of these boards have been made. Honestly, its looks are not just distinctive, but also very likable, I think. It's a pretty good looking board. I switched off the key light to reduce the glare coming off the case, and I have to say, I think it looks great. If you're thinking it looks similar to the Dell 8101, you're on the right track. This is a late Dell Model 90-8101W, a cheaper and lighter adapted version made by Silatech in Malaysia, and by far the most common variant of 8101. But the original was also an Alps-made AX keyboard. Those are quite sought after, by the way. The SGI Granite is also very sought after, but not because of the switches, but because these AX keyboards are one of the few true ANSI 101 key Alps keyboards out there, and the SGI Granite came with PBT die-sub keycaps, so this model has one of the few keycap sets that you can use with semi-modern Win-keyless keyboards. The 8101W's keycaps were even more modern, and they did include the Windows keys, but those were made out of lasered ABS, which kinda sucks. The Alps-made PBT die-subs on the SGI Granite have a peculiar oblique font on it, but it's not as ugly as Apple's Universe typeface in my opinion. It's okay, I don't mind it to be honest, but I prefer standard Helvetica. Still, these caps don't yellow and are quite durable, so I can see why they are considered to be desirable. Note that the die-sub legends on some Alps-made keyboards have a rather strange positioning. I think that's an artifact that occurs during the alignment of the transfer sheet. On this one, the alphanumeric keys look fine, but some of the other ones seem a little bit more top-aligned, which looks kind of weird if you look at it for more than a glance. It's not as bad as that old logo Dell I did a while ago, though. Another thing that sets the Alps-made Bigfoot keyboards apart from the more common Silatech ones is the weight. The SGI Granite weighs 1.68 kilograms as opposed to 1.47 for the 8101W. Heavier still is the old logo 8101 at 1.76 kilos. I find it rather strange that that one and the SGI aren't the same weight, but hey, who knows, perhaps even the AX series was subject to lightening over time. The switches in this one are white dampened Alps, the cost-reduced version of cream dampened Alps, although the SGI could also come with those. That said, I don't think cream damp are any better than white damp. Now, these appear to be the last type of complicated Alps switches that they developed around 1995, and they appear on many of Alps's last mechanical keyboards, although Silatech kept using black Alps until at least 2001. These switches are 3rd generation SKCM, and as such their key feel isn't ideal. Just like cream damp and black Alps, the tactility feels rough and sticky, and it's not just because this keyboard is in a suboptimal condition. It doesn't really feel bad or anything, but it seems the tactile leaves they used at the time just did something to the switches that made them feel kinda meh. The earlier tactile switches were way better and may end up just linearizing this keyboard, which tends to take all the roughness out of them. It's also what I recommend people doing to black Alps 8101s. The dampening is quite effective on this model compared to normal Alps, but not compared to more modern dampened switches like Cherries, although they use a very similar system. The slider has 2 slots in it for figure-of-8 shaped rubber pads, which, as you might notice, cushion impact on both the top and the bottom, but they don't extend past the slider on both directions. This is because the housing has extensions to meet the dampeners both up and down, thereby suppressing the impact sound of the slider hitting the housing, both on the upstroke and on the downstroke, while having minimal impact on key travel. Very clever idea. Because normal Alps are quite loud, a reduction in noise is relatively easy to achieve. Here's what the SGI sounds like compared to a non-dampened Dell Bigfoot. As you can tell, it's substantially quieter, but it's still a lot louder than a dampened Cherry board would be. Quiet Alps are still not really quiet in the overall scheme of things. Like many boards of the time, it has only 2-key rollover, which is normally okay for me, but over USB, it has the annoying tendency to cancel rather than block. What I mean by that is that normally when you have a combination of keys that's ambiguous to the keyboard logic, it just ignores extra key presses, which isn't the end of the world, but this is one of those that actually disables all current input, so you lose the keys that you were pressing down as well, and that is a problem. Let me demonstrate what happens. I press A, S, and then Z, and then you can see it unpresses A and S. That's just crap. It's also why I use this keyboard over native PS2, because this resolves this issue. Like this, you only get blocking and the occasional beep from your computer, which is much better than having your inputs cancelled. That shit be not okay. Overall, it's a cool keyboard, very well built, modern layout, and PBT die subs, although the input cancel over USB is rather annoying and the switches really aren't something to write home about. I can see why people would strip these of their keycaps, but then again, that's not really doing the chassis much justice either. I'd say if you have a PS2 port, it's great to use it with either linearized or swapped switches, making a nice silenced alternative to an 8101, and otherwise it's maybe just not quite the model for you. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.